Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a topic that honestly you'll be pretty darn grateful you're not experiencing firsthand. Imagine, if you will, the scorching heat of the ancient Egyptian sun beating down on the Nile, the scent of dust, and, well, other things heavy in the air. You're living a life that by today's standards is pretty challenging, full of manual labor, simple sustenance, and a deep abiding belief in the afterlife. And then one day it happens. Your heart, once beating with the rhythm of the delta, falls silent. Your breath, once filling your lungs with the humid air, ceases. You are quite simply dead. But for you, an ancient Egyptian death isn't the end of your woes. Oh no, it's just the really, really uncomfortable beginning of an even more arduous journey. Because tonight we're exploring why being an Egyptian mummy was, in a word, awful. And trust me, after hearing this, you'll probably be quite content with your modern day burial options. You see, the process of becoming a mummy, of preserving your body for eternity, was less about peaceful slumber and more about a prolonged, rather gruesome, and often quite smelly ordeal. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now tell me, where are you listening from tonight, and what time is it there? I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've just drawn your last breath. Perhaps it was a swift illness, a sudden accident, or simply the slow decline of old age. Whatever the cause, your family, draped in sorrow, begins the rituals. But for you, the recently departed your body is about to undergo a transformation that is anything but serene. You're not just a corpse. You're now raw material for an elaborate, centuries-old scientific and religious process designed to ensure your soul, your bi and ka, can return to your preserved vessel and enjoy an eternal afterlife. This isn't a quick trip to the mortician. This is a 70-day odyssey of dismemberment, drying, and devotion, and it starts almost immediately after your final exhale. The first step in your posthumous journey, and arguably one of the most unsettling, involves the arrival of the embalmers. These aren't solemn priests at this stage, but rather skilled, pragmatic craftsmen, often seen as a separate, somewhat lower caste of society. They know their trade intimately, and their trade involves your newly deceased form. Imagine, if you can, the cool, somewhat unsettling touch as they begin their initial preparations. There's a distinct smell in the air, not of incense and reverence yet, but of something more clinical, more raw. This initial stage is crucial as it sets the stage for everything that follows. Before any real work can begin, your body needs to be moved. You're transported, likely on a stretcher, to a special tent or workshop, often located near the Nile. This isn't a fancy, sterile operating room. It's a functional space, probably open to the elements, where the sun beats down and the flies ever present in Egypt are undoubtedly a nuisance. You lie there, a silent observer to your own undoing. It's here that the true unpleasantness begins, the moment when you realize that while your spirit may be elsewhere, your physical form is very much still a part of the earthly realm, subject to earthly indignities. The very first incision is made with a specialized obsidian blade, sharp and precise. This cut, usually on your left side, is not merely to access your organs, but to symbolically link you to the east, the rising sun, and rebirth. It's a detail that, while steeped in religious significance, doesn't make the actual act any less jarring. The internal organs are the first to go, as they are the most susceptible to decay. Think about it: everything soft, everything moist, everything that would quickly decompose and render your body unsuitable for eternal life must be removed. This is where the term awful truly begins to apply. You might think, being dead, you wouldn't feel it. But imagine the sheer violation of it all, that out of the systematic dismantling of your physical self. Your abdominal cavity is opened, and the process of evisceration commences. The embalmers, with practiced hands, reach inside and begin to meticulously remove your stomach, intestines, liver, and lungs. These organs, unlike your brain, are not discarded. They are carefully cleaned, dried, and preserved in what are known as canopic jars. Each jar, often adorned with the head of one of the four sons of Horus, is dedicated to a specific organ, ensuring its protection and safe passage into the afterlife. For example, your liver would go into a jar topped with Imseti, the human-headed god. Your lungs, Hapi, the baboon-headed god. Your stomach, Duamutef, the jackal-headed god. and your intestines, Cabesanuef, the falcon-headed god. It's a rather macabre system of internal organ storage, isn't it? The heart, however, is a different matter. Unlike the other organs, your heart is almost always left in place. Why? Because the ancient Egyptians believed the heart was the seat of intelligence, emotion, and memory. It was where your essence, your very being resided. It was the organ that would be weighed against the feather of Maat, the goddess of truth and justice in the Hall of Two Truths, during your judgment in the afterlife. To remove it would be to strip you of your identity, to leave you incomplete for the most crucial test of your eternal journey. This belief highlights a fascinating aspect of Egyptian thought, a deep understanding of the body's functions intertwined with an even deeper spiritual conviction. But let's not dwell on the heart's privileged status for too long, because there's another far more disgusting part of the process that awaits your cranial cavity. You see, the ancient Egyptians didn't attribute much importance to the brain. In fact, they considered it to be nothing more than mere stuffing, a useless organ that served no purpose in the afterlife. This particular historical fact is quite common knowledge, but the method of its removal is often glossed over. This is where it gets truly unpleasant. The most common method for brain removal involved a long, thin, hooked bronze instrument. This instrument would be inserted up your nose through the ethmoid bone, a thin sieve-like bone at the base of your skull, and then used to literally churn and liquefy your brain. Imagine, if you can, the sensation, even as a deceased individual, of something being vigorously stirred within your head, turning the delicate, intricate folds of your gray matter into a grayish, watery slurry. Once sufficiently liquefied, your head would be tilted and the liquid brain matter would be drained out through your nostrils. Sometimes, if the nasal passage method wasn't sufficient, a hole might be drilled into the skull, often at the back, to facilitate removal. Either way, it's a messy, undignified end for what we now consider our most vital organ. The brain was then simply discarded, sometimes even thrown into the Nile, considered waste. This really puts a new spin on brain drain, doesn't it? Now, your body cavity, having been emptied of its precious cargo, is then rinsed. Not with sterile water and antiseptics as we might imagine, but often with palm wine, a fermented beverage with antiseptic properties, and a concoction of spices. This was a practical step aimed at further cleansing the body and preparing it for the next much longer stage of preservation. The smell at this point must have been an odd mixture of death alcohol and exotic aromatics. It's a far cry from the serene image of eternal sleep often associated with mummies. As your body lies there hollowed out and cleansed, you are a shell, a vessel waiting for its next phase of transformation. The embalmers, having completed the initial messy work, now turn their attention to the crucial process of dehydration. This is where the magic, or rather the science, of mummification truly comes into play, and it involves a substance that was absolutely essential to the entire process: natron. Natron is a naturally occurring salt, a mixture of sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate found abundantly in certain dried lake beds in Egypt. It has powerful desiccant properties, meaning it draws out moisture. Think of it like this: your body is a sponge full of water. To preserve it, you need to remove every single drop of that water. Otherwise, bacteria will thrive and decomposition will set in. Natron was the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a superabsorbent drying agent. Your now empty body cavity is packed full of natron, and your entire body is covered in a thick layer of it. You become essentially a human salt lick. This is a process that isn't quick. It takes time, a lot of time. We're talking about 35 to 40 days, sometimes even longer, depending on the size of the body and the environmental conditions. For over a month, you simply lie there, slowly but surely drying out. During this long period, the natron works its magic, drawing out all the bodily fluids, dehydrating your tissues and organs. The appearance of your skin changes dramatically. It shrivels, darkens, and becomes leathery. Your features, once soft and expressive, become taut and sunken. You would become a skeletal silhouette, a mere shadow of your former self. The smell, though perhaps lessened by the natron, would still be present, a dry, dusty, metallic odor. It's a slow, agonizing transformation, a deliberate desiccation that leaves you utterly devoid of moisture. This extended period of drying, was not just about preservation, it was also a time of ritual and prayer. While the embalmers worked on the physical body, priests would be reciting prayers and performing rituals to ensure the safe passage of your soul through the various stages of the afterlife. The line between the sacred and the practical was incredibly blurred in ancient Egypt. The physical preparation of the body was just as important as the spiritual guidance of the soul. One common historical fact often overlooked is the sheer amount of natron required. To effectively mummify a single body, tons of this salt would be used. Imagine the logistics of gathering, transporting, and storing such vast quantities. It speaks to the incredible resources and organization that went into this ancient practice. Furthermore, scholars still debate whether the embalmers occasionally applied heated natron or if it was always used at ambient temperature, a subtle but significant detail that could affect the efficiency and outcome of the drying process. Some historians still debate whether the removal of the brain always happened the same way, or if techniques varied based on social status or even the skill of the embalmer. These unanswered questions only add to the mystique and complexity of the practice. After weeks of slow, deliberate dehydration, your body once plump with life has become a shrunken, leathery husk. The natron, having done its work, is carefully removed. Imagine the dusty, gritty residue left behind, clinging to every fold of your shriveled skin. Your internal cavity, which was packed with the drying salt, is now thoroughly clean and remarkably dry. But merely being dry isn't enough for the journey into eternity. You need to look somewhat presentable, or at least recognizable, to your Bianca when they return. This is where the next phase of the mummification process kicks in, a phase focused on restoration and preparation for the afterlife. The embalmers, having transformed you from a soft, decaying body into a desiccated shell, now begin the delicate task of plumping you up, so to speak. Your sunken cheeks and hollowed eyes are a testament to the harsh realities of the drying process. To counteract this, your body cavity, which was emptied of organs and then filled with natron, is now packed with various materials to restore some semblance of your original form. This could include linen pads, sawdust resin, or even bundles of herbs and spices. The aim is to give you a more lifelike appearance, ensuring that when your spirit returns, it doesn't find a completely unrecognizable vessel. Think of it like stuffing a rather large, ancient doll. The process is meticulous, aiming for a balance between natural appearance and effective preservation. Sometimes even the limbs might be patted or gently manipulated to achieve a more natural pose. The embalmers are artists in their own way, working with a very unique canvas. This phase isn't just about aesthetics, it's about making your body a welcoming home for your immortal components. Once the internal packing is complete, your skin, which has become brittle and dry, is treated. Various oils and resins are rubbed over your entire body. These aren't just for fragrance, though. They would certainly help with any lingering odors from the previous stages. These oils, often derived from frankincense, myrrh, and cedar, serve multiple purposes. They soften your skin, making it more pliable and less prone to cracking, which is crucial for the subsequent wrapping process. They also have antiseptic properties, offering an additional layer of protection against decay. And, of course, they lend a fragrant, almost sacred aroma to your preserved form, preparing you for the divine realm. Imagine the subtle earthy scent, a blend of ancient resins and the lingering dry dust of the natron. It's a sensory experience, even for the deceased if such a thing were possible. This application of oils and unguents is a long, deliberate process, often accompanied by incantations and prayers recited by priests. The line between the practical and the ritualistic is almost entirely erased at this point. Every brushstroke of oil, every careful rub is imbued with spiritual significance, designed to purify and prepare you for your eternal journey. You are no longer just a body. You are becoming a sacred object, a vessel ready for rebirth. Now comes the part that most people immediately think of when they hear mummy the wrapping. This isn't a quick job. It's an incredibly lengthy, intricate, and labor-intensive process that can take up to 15 to 20 days on its own. You are meticulously wrapped in hundreds of yards of linen bandages, often torn from old clothing or household linens, but for those of higher status, specially woven new cloth might be used. These bandages are not simply tossed haphazardly around you. Oh no! There's a method to the madness, a specific pattern and sequence that the embalmers follow with exacting precision. The wrapping typically begins with your individual fingers and toes, each digit carefully bound. Then your hands and feet are wrapped, followed by your arms and legs. Each layer is applied tightly, smoothly, and deliberately, ensuring that no part of your body is left exposed. As each limb is completed, it's laid neatly against your body, sometimes secured with more linen strips. This process continues layer upon layer until your entire body is encased in a thick cocoon of linen. Think about the sheer claustrophobia of it all if you were still capable of feeling it. Thousands of strips of linen pressing in on every inch of your being. Between these layers of linen, various amulets and charms are strategically placed. These aren't just pretty trinkets. They are powerful magical objects, each with a specific purpose, designed to protect you from harm and guide you safely through the dangers of the afterlife. For example, a scarab beetle amulet, often made of greenstone, might be placed over your heart. This was one of the most vital amulets intended to prevent your heart from testifying against you during the weighing of the heart ceremony in the afterlife. Imagine a small, intricately carved beetle nestled deep within the linen around your chest, a silent guardian for your most important organ. Other common amulets included the Tayet knot, or Isis knot, which offered the protection of the goddess Isis, and the Jiyad pillar symbolizing stability and duration, often associated with Osiris. There might be small figures of gods, protective eyes, the Eye of Horus, or even miniature headrests ensuring your head remains supported. Each amulet is carefully positioned, often with specific prayers and incantations recited as it is laid into place. This isn't just a physical wrapping, it's a spiritual fortification. The quality and quantity of these bandages and amulets varied greatly depending on your wealth and status. A pharaoh or a high-ranking noble would be wrapped in layers upon layers of the finest linen, interspersed with hundreds of precious amulets made of gold, lapis lazuli, and other valuable materials. A commoner, on the other hand, might have fewer layers, coarser linen, and perhaps only a few simple terracotta amulets. This highlights the socio-economic disparities even in death. As the wrapping progresses, liberal amounts of warm resin are poured over the linen layers. This isn't just glue, it serves as a powerful adhesive, binding the layers together, creating a hard, protective shell around your body. It also acts as an additional sealant, preventing moisture and insects from penetrating the mummy. The resin, often dark and viscous, would seep into the linen, making it stiff and impermeable. This is why many mummies appear dark and rigid. They are essentially encased in a resinous, linen-infused cast. Imagine the smell of the warm, smoky resin, mingling with the dry linen and the subtle fragrance of the oils. It's an acrid, almost cloying aroma filling the air as your eternal tomb is meticulously constructed around you. The final layers of wrapping often included a shroud or a large sheet of linen, sometimes painted with images of gods or protective symbols. Finally, your face might be covered with a painted portrait mask or a gilded cartonnage mask designed to resemble you and provide a recognizable form for your returning Ba and K. This mask is not merely decorative, it serves a crucial function in bridging the gap between your preserved body and your immortal soul. It's your last earthly face crafted to ensure your identity is preserved for eternity. The meticulousness of this wrapping process is truly astounding. It speaks to the ancient Egyptians' unwavering belief in the afterlife and their determination to ensure the deceased had every possible advantage in their journey through it. This was not a quick, cheap, or easy undertaking. It was a substantial investment of time, resources, and skilled labor. And once you were fully wrapped, you were no longer just a body. You were a mummy ready for your final resting place. One fascinating yet less commonly known detail is that, sometimes particularly for high-status individuals, fake eyes made of obsidian or other dark stones were inserted into the eye sockets after the brain removal, giving the mummy a more lifelike, watchful appearance even under the bandages. This small detail adds another layer of creepiness and commitment to realism that is often overlooked. And while we know the general steps, the exact sequence and variations in the wrapping process are still debated by Egyptologists, with some arguing for regional differences or evolving techniques over millennia. The precise techniques used by different workshops and whether certain priestly families guarded secret wrapping methods remain open questions. It's a testament to the complexity and longevity of this ancient practice. With your body now a hardened, resin-encased, linen-bound effigy, the embalmers have completed their painstaking work. You are no longer merely deceased, you are a fully realized mummy, a vessel prepared for eternity. But the journey isn't over. Your transformation from a living being to an immortalized relic is almost complete, but your final resting place still awaits. And this too is far from a comfortable prospect. Imagine being gently yet firmly lifted. Your body stiff and unyielding is carefully placed into the first of what will likely be several layers of protective coverings your coffin. For the wealthy, this might be an elaborate, anthropoid, human-shaped wooden coffin, intricately painted with scenes from the afterlife protective deities and hieroglyphic text designed to guide and safeguard your journey. For those of lesser means, it might be a simpler wooden box or even just a mat. The craftsmanship, the artistry, and the sheer detail that went into these coffins are truly astonishing. Each curve, each color, each symbol was deliberately chosen to ensure your continued existence in the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. If you were particularly fortunate, or rather unfortunate enough to be exceptionally wealthy, you wouldn't just have one coffin. Oh no, you'd have a nested set like Russian dolls. One coffin would fit snugly inside another, sometimes up to 3 or 4 layers each, adding to your protection and symbolic importance. Imagine the dark, enclosed space within the feeling of being utterly sealed off from the world you once knew. The air, even after millennia, might carry the faint, dry scent of ancient wood and resin. But the coffin is merely the first layer. The ultimate shell, the grandest and most imposing of your final enclosures, is the sarcophagus. The word itself, derived from Greek, means flesh-eating, a rather grim irony given its purpose. A sarcophagus is typically a massive stone container carved from granite, basalt, or limestone, often beautifully decorated with religious texts, images of gods, and depictions of your journey through the underworld. These stone behemoths were designed to be virtually impenetrable, protecting your mummy from grave robbers' environmental damage and anything that might disturb your eternal slumber. Imagine the immense weight of the lid slowly, inexorably being lowered into place. The grinding sound of stone against stone, echoing in the confined space of the burial chamber. For you, the mummy, it's the ultimate sealing, the final farewell to the light of day. You are now truly entombed, held within layers of wood and stone, destined to remain undisturbed for eternity. Or so the Egyptians hoped. The sheer scale of these sarcophagi is impressive. They were often carved from single blocks of stone, sometimes weighing many tons, requiring immense logistical effort and skill to transport and maneuver into the narrow confines of a tomb. The precision with which the lid fit onto the base was often remarkable, designed to create an almost airtight seal. This wasn't just about security, it was about ensuring that the sacred space within remained pristine, a perfect sanctuary for your preserved body. Being inside the sarcophagus, even if you were dead, would be the ultimate experience of claustrophobia. You are cocooned within a heavy, dark, silent space. There is no light, no sound from the outside world, just the perpetual silence of the tomb. For the ancient Egyptians, this was not a place of dread, but a place of transition, a gateway to the afterlife. For us contemplating it now, it feels incredibly confining, a profound sense of isolation. The placement of the sarcophagus within the tomb was also a critical part of the ritual. It would be laid in the burial chamber, often at the deepest part of the tomb, surrounded by all the grave goods you would need for your journey and your eternal life. These weren't just random items, they were carefully selected possessions, furniture, food, drink, jewelry, tools, and even models of servants, all intended to provide you with everything necessary for a comfortable and prosperous existence in the afterlife. Imagine being surrounded by all your worldly possessions, knowing they are there to serve you in perpetuity. But let's be real for a moment. All this protection, the layers of bandages, the coffins, the massive sarcophagus, the intricate tomb design, was ultimately for naught if a determined grave robber came calling. And they did come calling. Grave robbing was a persistent problem throughout ancient Egyptian history. Despite the curses, the elaborate traps, and the sheer bulk of the stone, the lure of unimaginable riches proved too strong for many. Consider the efforts made to secure your eternal rest. The long, winding corridors of your tomb, often filled with false passages, dead ends, and hidden shafts. the massive stone portcullises designed to slam shut, blocking entry, the intricate designs to disguise the entrance to the burial chamber itself. These were all attempts to deter the living from disturbing the dead. Yet the history of Egyptian archaeology is filled with tales of plundered tombs, their contents scattered, their mummies desecrated. It's a rather cruel irony that after all the effort, expense, and spiritual devotion, your eternal peace could be shattered by a few determined individuals wielding chisels and torches. The belief that disturbing a mummy would bring a curse, a common trope in modern fiction, likely stems from these historical realities and the very real consequences suffered by those who did violate tombs. While there's no scientific evidence of a mummy's curse, the ancient Egyptians certainly propagated the idea, inscribing curses on tomb walls as a final desperate deterrent against sacrilege. Imagine the fear that such a warning might instill in the hearts of those who believed in such things. A lesser-known detail about sarcophagi is that, for some periods and social classes, particularly during the New Kingdom, the sarcophagus itself could be anthropoid, mirroring the shape of the inner coffins and the mummy itself. This added another layer of personalized protection and symbolism. The interior of the sarcophagus lid would often be painted with a depiction of the sky goddess Nut, arching over the deceased, symbolizing her protection and rebirth into the heavens. This detail further illustrates the comprehensive spiritual beliefs woven into every aspect of mummification. Scholars still debate the precise methods used to prevent the largest sarcophagus lids from being opened from the inside should an attempt be made to seal someone prematurely, an interesting academic puzzle that speaks to the engineering prowess of the ancient Egyptians. You are now sealed. The massive lid of your sarcophagus has thudded into place, plunging you into an eternal darkness that even your dead eyes cannot perceive. The tomb, painstakingly carved out of rock or built with massive stones, becomes your final silent sanctuary. For the ancient Egyptians, this was the ultimate destination, the place where your preserved body would await the return of your Ba and Ka, allowing you to reanimate and enjoy the splendors of the afterlife. But for you, the mummy, what was this eternal rest truly like? Imagine the absolute stillness. There is no breeze, no shifting sands, no whisper of the Nile. The air inside your tomb, if you could perceive it, would be incredibly dry and still laden with the ancient dust of millennia. It's a silence so profound, it's almost a presence in itself, broken only by the occasional creak of settling rock or the scuttling of unseen insects that, despite all precautions, sometimes found their way in. You are utterly alone, suspended in time, a silent witness to nothing. Your tomb wasn't just a burial chamber. It was designed to be a miniature version of your earthly existence, a place where you could continue to enjoy all the comforts and necessities of life. Surrounding your sarcophagus would be a vast array of grave goods. These weren't random offerings. They were meticulously chosen items intended to ensure your prosperity and well-being in the afterlife. Think about what you'd need if you were suddenly transported to an eternal realm. Food, drink, furniture, clothing, jewelry, tools, games, even cosmetics. All these were placed within your tomb, ready for your use. Imagine golden necklaces gleaming dully in the perpetual darkness, pottery vessels still holding the faint scent of ancient grains or wine, intricately carved wooden chairs, and even small boats designed to carry you across the celestial Nile. For the wealthy, this collection could be astonishing in its scale and opulence, turning your tomb into a veritable treasure trove. For less fortunate individuals, the grave goods might be simpler, perhaps just a few pots of food and a humble blanket, but the intention was the same, to provide for your needs in the next world. Among the most fascinating grave goods were the ushabti figures. These small, often blue or green faience figurines, sometimes numbering in the hundreds, were miniature servants. Each ushabti was inscribed with a magical spell from the Book of the Dead, promising that if you were called upon to do any work in the afterlife, tilling fields, irrigating canals, or carrying sand, the ushabti would magically come to life and perform the labor for you. Imagine the relief knowing that even in death you wouldn't have to lift a finger. It's a clever ancient workaround to eternal chores. These figures weren't just for decoration. They were a practical solution to the perceived problems of an eternal existence. The Egyptians believed that the afterlife, while glorious, still required a degree of effort. The Ushabti ensured that the deceased, especially the elite, could enjoy a truly leisurely eternity. It's a wonderfully specific and somewhat whimsical detail about the ancient Egyptian conception of paradise. For you, the mummy, your daily routine in this eternal slumber was well non-existent. You simply were. You existed in a state of suspended animation, awaiting the moment your personality, your spirit often depicted as a human-headed bird, and your ka, your life force, your double, often depicted as an uplifted pair of arms, would reunite with your body. Only then, with your physical and spiritual components reunited, could you truly live again in the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise. The tomb itself was not just a storage space. It was a sacred landscape, a microcosm of the universe. The walls of your burial chamber would be covered with vibrant paintings and carved reliefs depicting scenes from your life offerings to the gods and protective spells. These artistic elements weren't just pretty pictures. They were magical texts and illustrations designed to ensure your safe passage through the underworld and to provide sustenance and protection for your eternal existence. Imagine lying there surrounded by these silent painted narratives, a continuous loop of sacred imagery intended to guide and safeguard you. However, despite all the elaborate precautions and sacred rituals, the reality of being a mummy was often far from idyllic. The belief in your eternal peace was often shattered by the very human desire for wealth. Grave robbing was rampant throughout Egyptian history from the earliest dynasties right up to the modern era. Imagine the jarring disturbance as the silence of your tomb is suddenly broken by the scrape of metal on stone, the murmur of hushed voices, and then inevitably the violent intrusion. The robbers wouldn't care for your eternal journey or your spiritual well-being. They were after the gold, the jewels, the precious objects that accompanied you into the afterlife. Your intricately laid out grave goods would be scattered, broken, and plundered. Your carefully placed amulets ripped from your linen wrappings. Your very sarcophagus might be defiled or even smashed in their frantic search for valuables. It's a brutal and disrespectful end to what was supposed to be a sacred slumber. Many mummies found by modern archaeologists are not in their pristine state, but show clear signs of having been violently ransacked, their bodies often dismembered in the process. This widespread practice of tomb violation explains why so few unplundered tombs of pharaohs have ever been found. The exception being the magnificent tomb of Tutankhamun, which, due to a combination of luck and strategic burial, remained largely untouched until its discovery in the 20th century. For most mummies, the carefully constructed fantasy of an undisturbed eternity was just that, a fantasy. You were just another prize in a treasure hunt, your spiritual journey irrelevant to those seeking earthly gain. Even if your tomb remained undisturbed by human hands, the passage of millennia brought its own challenges. The occasional seismic tremor might shift rocks, potentially damaging your coffin or sarcophagus. The slow creep of moisture, if the tomb wasn't perfectly sealed, could introduce fungi and bacteria, slowly degrading your preserved form. The relentless march of time meant that even the most meticulously prepared mummy would eventually face the slow, inexorable forces of nature. One fascinating but less common scholarly debate revolves around the psychological impact, if any, on the deceased from the Egyptian perspective. While we know the rituals were for the living and the Bai and Kai, some texts hint at a desire for the deceased to see the sun or breathe the air, again suggesting a subtle, almost yearning for connection with the world, even from within the tomb. Scholars still debate the extent to which these sentiments were purely metaphorical versus reflecting some deeper, unexpressed aspect of the Egyptian belief in a conscious presence within the tomb. This subtle nuance adds a layer of depth to what otherwise seems like a purely practical or spiritual undertaking. Your eternal slumber, carefully orchestrated and meticulously prepared, might seem like the quietest existence imaginable. You are sealed within stone, surrounded by grave goods theoretically undisturbed. But the ancient Egyptians believed that death was not an end, but a transition, a perilous journey through the duat, the underworld. For you, the mummy, your physical presence in the tomb was merely the anchor for your spiritual voyage. And let me tell you, that voyage was anything but a peaceful cruise. Imagine if you could your spiritual self, your Bia and Ka, awakening and embarking on this cosmic adventure. The Duat was not some serene paradise from the outset. Oh no, it was a dark, treacherous realm filled with monstrous demons, fiery lakes, and terrifying trials. Think of it as the ultimate obstacle course, but with far higher stakes than just bragging rights. Your survival depended entirely on your knowledge of spells, your purity of heart, and the protection afforded by the gods and the rituals performed on your behalf. Your journey through the Duat would begin with the setting sun, as you would metaphorically join the sun god Ra on his nightly voyage across the underworld. Each hour of the night brought a new challenge, a new gate to pass through, and a new set of terrifying creatures to appease or overcome. You'd encounter serpentine demons guardians with knives for limbs and lakes of fire designed to consume the unworthy. This wasn't a relaxing passage. It was a constant test of your spiritual fortitude. To navigate this perilous landscape, you relied heavily on the Book of the Dead. This wasn't a single book as the name might suggest, but a collection of spells, hymns, and prayers often written on papyrus scrolls and placed within your tomb, or even wrapped within your linen bandages. Each spell had a specific purpose: to open a gate to identify a god, to transform into a beneficial animal, or to ward off a specific demon. Imagine having to remember countless passwords and incantations just to get through your afterlife. It's a lot more complicated than remembering your Netflix password, that's for sure. One of the most crucial and terrifying trials you would face was the weighing of the heart ceremony in the Hall of Two Truths. This was your judgment, the moment when your worthiness for the Field of Reeds, the Egyptian paradise, would be determined. Imagine standing before Osiris, the Lord of the Underworld, and a panel of 42 divine judges. Your heart, which, as we discussed earlier, was deliberately left inside your mummy, would be metaphorically placed on one side of a scale. On the other side, the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If your heart was light, untainted by sin, it would balance perfectly with the feather, and you would be deemed worthy to enter paradise. But if your heart was heavy with misdeeds, if it outweighed the feather, then it would be devoured by Ammit, the devourer of the dead. A terrifying beast with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. This was the ultimate annihilation, the complete destruction of your soul, leaving you with no afterlife whatsoever. Talk about high-pressure situations. The fear of Ammit, the fear of eternal oblivion, was a powerful motivator for living a virtuous life in ancient Egypt. Every action, every thought was believed to contribute to the weight of your heart. It's a very practical application of religious belief, influencing daily conduct with the promise of eternal reward or terrifying destruction. Even if you successfully passed the weighing of the heart, your journey wasn't necessarily over. The Field of Reeds, while idyllic, still required some effort. As we mentioned, the Ushabti figures were there to do the work for you, ensuring you wouldn't have to toil in the afterlife. But you still had to navigate this new landscape, interact with gods and other justified dead, and generally adapt to an eternal existence that, while blissful, wasn't entirely effortless. The concept of the afterlife for the ancient Egyptians was incredibly detailed and multifaceted, evolving over thousands of years. It wasn't a static concept, and different periods saw different emphasis on certain aspects of the duat, or the judgment process. This fluidity in belief adds a layer of complexity to understanding your post-mortem experience. One particular detail that often goes unnoticed in popular portrayals is the intense focus on avoiding the second death. For the Egyptians, true annihilation wasn't just dying in the physical sense, but having your name forgotten, your tomb desecrated beyond recognition, or your soul failing the trials of the duat. This concept of the second death underscores their profound belief in memory and identity as crucial for eternal life. Imagine the constant striving, even in death, to avoid this ultimate oblivion. Historians still actively debate the precise theological implications of certain spells in the Book of the Dead. For example, some spells seem to contradict each other, or offer multiple paths to the same outcome, leading scholars to question whether these were regional variations, evolving beliefs, or perhaps even different schools of priestly thought that held sway at various times. The exact nuances of how the different parts of the soul, the Beka Akren and Shut, interacted and reunited remain a subject of considerable academic discussion, highlighting the deep complexity of ancient Egyptian metaphysics. Your long, long slumber continues a silent witness to the relentless march of time. Inside your sealed sarcophagus within the confines of your elaborate tomb, you remain a testament to ancient beliefs and meticulous preservation. But the world outside has changed drastically and irrevocably. Millennia have passed, empires have risen and fallen, and the very concept of death and the afterlife has undergone countless transformations. Yet for you, the mummy, your physical state is one of remarkable stagnation. Imagine the sheer, unimaginable duration of your quiet existence. Centuries blur into millennia. The dynasties that revered you vanish into dust. The language spoken around your tomb fades into obscurity. The very landscape above ground transforms with cities crumbling into ruins and new civilizations rising from their ashes. You are in essence a time capsule, a physical embodiment of a bygone era. For many centuries after your initial interment, your existence remains largely undisturbed. Grave robbers, as we discussed, are a persistent threat, but for every plundered tomb, there are others that remain hidden, their secrets patiently waiting. The desert sands, ever shifting, often provide an additional layer of protection, slowly burying and concealing the entrances to your sacred resting place. This natural camouflage becomes your unwitting guardian, preserving you from the prying eyes of the living. However, the modern world eventually comes calling. Not with the stealthy torchlit incursions of ancient tomb raiders, but with the systematic scientific approach of archaeologists. These are individuals driven not by greed for gold, but by an insatiable curiosity about the past. They come armed not with chisels and crowbars, but with brushes, trowels, and meticulous recording equipment. Their goal isn't to steal your treasures, but to uncover the story of your life, your beliefs, and the civilization that created you. Imagine the first faint glimmer of light that penetrates your tomb in thousands of years. It's not the harsh glare of the desert sun, but the soft glow of an electric lamp, casting long, dancing shadows across the painted walls of your chamber. The silence which has been your constant companion is broken by hushed whispers, the click of cameras, and the gentle scraping of tools. It's a profound disturbance, an abrupt end to your meticulously planned eternal rest. As the archaeologists painstakingly work their way through the layers of your tomb, you, the mummy, are eventually revealed. The heavy sarcophagus lid is slowly, carefully lifted, breaking its ancient seal. The rush of cooler, fresher air might seem shocking if you could still feel such things after millennia of stagnant, dry air. Your nested coffins are then opened one by one until finally there you are revealed to the modern world. The sight of a mummy, even to seasoned archaeologists, is always a moment of profound awe and respect. You are a human being from an unimaginable past, a direct link to a civilization that flourished thousands of years ago. But for you, the mummy, this revelation is not a moment of glory, but an intrusion, a rude awakening from your intended eternal sleep. You are carefully examined, measured, photographed, and documented. Your bandages, once so vital for your preservation, are now the very things that must be removed to reveal your secrets. Imagine the slow, meticulous unwrapping process layer by layer, revealing the ancient oils, the hidden amulets, and finally your shriveled, preserved form. It's an incredibly intimate and vulnerable moment, a posthumous stripping away of your final defenses. This unwrapping, while done with the utmost care and scientific purpose, often resulted in damage. The ancient resins that hardened around your linen might make the bandages stick stubbornly to your skin, requiring delicate but firm manipulation. Fragments of bone brittle from millennia of desiccation might break. Your features, once meticulously padded and preserved, might suffer further damage during handling. It's a sad irony that the very act of studying you, of bringing your story to light, could lead to your further physical degradation. Today, with advancements in technology, archaeologists and conservators try to minimize direct contact. X-rays, CT scans, and non-invasive imaging techniques allow them to see inside your bandages without unwrapping you, preserving your fragile form while still extracting valuable information. This modern approach is a testament to a growing respect for the deceased, balancing the pursuit of knowledge with the desire to maintain the integrity of the ancient dead. The study of mummies has revealed an incredible wealth of information about ancient Egyptian life, health, diet, and even diseases. You, the mummy, become a living textbook, providing direct evidence that no papyrus scroll or tomb painting could ever fully convey. Your bones can tell tales of your age, your stature, and any injuries or illnesses you suffered. The remnants of your last meal, sometimes found in your intestines, can reveal your diet. Even tiny parasites found within your body can offer clues about ancient hygiene and disease patterns. One common misconception is that all mummies were pharaohs or royalty. While those are the most famous, the vast majority of mummies discovered are of common people, their bodies naturally preserved by the dry desert sands or simply wrapped and buried without the elaborate processes reserved for the elite. These poor man's mummies offer equally valuable, if less glamorous, insights into the daily lives of ancient Egyptians. A less widely discussed aspect of modern mummy study is the ethical debate surrounding it. As science advances, the ability to extract DNA from ancient remains raises questions about the privacy and dignity of the deceased. How much information should be extracted? Who owns that information? And does the pursuit of scientific knowledge outweigh the ancient desire for an undisturbed eternal rest? These are complex questions that scholars and museum curators grapple with, highlighting the delicate balance between archaeological discovery and ethical consideration. The exact parameters for DNA extraction and analysis from ancient human remains are still a point of significant academic contention, with some arguing for broader access and others for stricter limitations to protect the integrity of the deceased. Your journey through millennia continues, a silent observer to the ceaseless turning of the world outside your ancient confines. You've weathered the sands of time, the intrusions of ancient grave robbers, and now the methodical explorations of modern archaeologists. Yet even in your preserved state, your existence as a mummy isn't without its final peculiar indignities in the modern era. Imagine being carefully moved from your tomb, no longer destined for eternal rest, but for the brightly lit, climate-controlled environment of a museum. This is a stark contrast to the quiet darkness you were prepared for. Instead of the sacred silence of your burial chamber, you are now surrounded by hushed whispers, the clicking of cameras, and the constant murmur of curious visitors. You are no longer just a body awaiting rebirth. You are an exhibit, an artifact, a silent teacher to millions. In a museum, you are placed behind glass, a barrier between your ancient world and the present one. You become a subject of intense scrutiny. Millions of eyes gaze upon your shriveled form, speculating about your life, your death, and the mysteries of your time. Children point, adults ponder, and scholars meticulously analyze every inch of your preserved being. It's a level of public exposure that no ancient Egyptian could have ever conceived of, a profound departure from the private, sacred nature of your original interment. Think about the conditions of your new home. The temperature and humidity are precisely controlled not to honor your spiritual journey, but to ensure your physical preservation for as long as possible. You are protected from pest light and fluctuating environments, all designed to arrest the natural decay that time inevitably brings. It's a scientific preservation, a testament to human ingenuity, but one entirely divorced from the spiritual beliefs that led to your creation. One of the more peculiar indignities you might face is the scientific analysis. While crucial for understanding the past, this often involves taking samples of your fragile remains. Imagine tiny fragments of your bone or tissue being carefully removed for DNA analysis, isotopic studies, or chemical examinations. These microscopic pieces of you can reveal astonishing details: what you ate, where you lived, what diseases you suffered from, and even your genetic lineage. Your silent body speaks volumes, but at the cost of being quite literally picked apart. In the past, the treatment of mummies was far less respectful. During the medieval period and up to the 19th century, mummified remains were ground into a powder and sold as mummy medicine. People believed, quite wrongly, that ingesting mummy powder could cure a vast array of ailments, from headaches to the plague. Imagine your ancient form, prepared for eternity, being reduced to a morbid medicinal ingredient consumed by the very living you were meant to leave behind. This practice thankfully eventually faded as scientific understanding advanced, but it highlights a truly awful chapter in the post-mortem life of many mummies. Even more disturbingly, mummies were sometimes used for entertainment. During the Victorian era, unwrapping parties became a bizarre social phenomenon. Wealthy individuals would purchase a mummy, often from dubious sources, and host elaborate events where the mummy would be publicly unwrapped for the amusement of their guests. Imagine the layers of your sacred bandages painstakingly applied millennia ago, being carelessly torn away by gloved hands, revealing your desiccated form to a fascinated if ghoulish audience. It was a crude and disrespectful spectacle entirely at odds with the solemn purpose for which you were prepared. Today, while such practices are thankfully relegated to the past, the ethical debate surrounding the display of human remains continues. Museums grapple with the question of whether it is appropriate to exhibit mummies, given the sacred and personal nature of their original purpose. For some, it is a crucial educational tool, a way to connect modern audiences with ancient civilizations. For others, it is a violation of human dignity, a continuation of colonial-era practices that treated human remains as mere curiosities. This ongoing discussion means that even now in your permanent exhibition space, your fate is not entirely settled. Some mummies are removed from public display and placed in storage out of respect for their cultural origins. Others remain serving as ambassadors from a distant past, their silent presence provoking thought and wonder. One less known fact about modern mummy studies is the use of facial reconstruction techniques. Forensic artists using detailed scans of the skull can create remarkably accurate three-dimensional models of what your face might have looked like in life. Imagine seeing a digital representation of your own ancient face brought to life through scientific artistry. It's a powerful, almost unsettling way to bridge the gap between your preserved remains and the living person you once were. Scholars today continually engage in robust debates regarding the repatriation of mummified remains to their countries of origin. This academic discussion highlights the tension between universal knowledge and cultural heritage, questioning who ultimately owns the past and where ancient bodies should ultimately rest. In a museum for the world to see or back in the land from which they came, perhaps even reinterred according to ancient traditions. This unresolved scholarly debate underscores that even in the 21st century, the awfulness of being an Egyptian mummy from an ancient perspective still has modern repercussions. Your existence as a mummy meticulously preserved and profoundly old is now entwined with the modern world in ways your ancient self could never have imagined. From the solemn darkness of your tomb, you have transitioned to the bright, sterile environment of a museum, a silent testament to a civilization long gone. But even within these controlled conditions, new challenges and unexpected roles emerge for your millennia-old form. Imagine for a moment the paradox of your situation. You were created to be eternal to ensure your passage into a spiritual afterlife. Yet, in the modern era, you are largely understood through a scientific lens. The rituals, the spells, the spiritual journey, these are now historical curiosities interpreted through textbooks and academic papers. Your sacred purpose has been replaced by an educational one. You are no longer preparing for the field of reeds. You are educating students about ancient funerary practices. This shift in purpose means you are subject to the constant evolution of scientific inquiry. New technologies emerge offering unprecedented insights into your ancient body. We talked about X-rays and CT scans, but imagine the advent of even more sophisticated imaging techniques, perhaps even molecular analysis that can tell us about the diseases you had, the pathogens that inhabited your body, or even the genetic predispositions of your family. Every decade brings new tools, each capable of extracting more secrets from your silent form, further unraveling the mysteries of your ancient life. Consider the meticulous conservation efforts now applied to you. Conservators, highly skilled professionals, work tirelessly to prevent any further degradation of your fragile remains. Imagine the tiny adjustments to humidity, the careful monitoring of light exposure, the specialized inert gas environments created to halt decay. Your continued existence as a mummy in the 21st century is a direct result of incredible human dedication and scientific advancement. But this is not done for your spiritual benefit. It's done for the benefit of humanity's understanding of its past. You are a priceless historical artifact, and your preservation is paramount. Another peculiar aspect of your modern existence is the constant cycle of research and publication. Scholars from around the globe study your every detail, publishing papers, writing books, and debating interpretations. You become a subject of academic discourse, your existence fueling countless university courses and specialized conferences. Imagine being the silent centerpiece of vigorous intellectual arguments with experts poring over scans of your bones or the remaining fibers of your linen wrappings, each trying to extract new knowledge or challenge existing theories about your life and times. This isn't just about dry academic pursuits either. Your image, your very being, inspires countless works of fiction, from horror movies to adventure novels. The mummy's curse trope, while a dramatic exaggeration, ensures your continued relevance in popular culture. You are both a respected historical artifact and a terrifying fictional monster, a strange duality that exists only in the modern consciousness. Imagine being simultaneously revered in a museum exhibit and feared in a late-night horror flick. It's a rather undignified, if impactful, legacy. Furthermore, your body might travel. Imagine being carefully packed into a custom-built, climate-controlled crate, loaded onto a plane and flown across continents for a temporary exhibition. You, who were meticulously sealed away for eternity, are now a globe-trotting artifact, visiting cities and countries your ancient self could never have dreamed of. Millions more people will gaze upon you, captivated by your ancient presence, but always through the barrier of glass, always in a controlled artificial environment. Your eternal rest has become a continuous world tour. This global exposure also brings with it the increasing focus on the ethical implications of displaying human remains. Activists and cultural heritage advocates raise important questions. Should ancient bodies be displayed at all? Do modern institutions have the right to hold these remains? Should they be returned to their countries of origin for reburial, honoring the original intent of their preparation? These are complex, sometimes emotionally charged discussions that directly impact your current life as a mummy. For many mummies, this means a shift from public display to behind-the-scenes study or even repatriation. While some remain on exhibit due to their historical significance or unique preservation, others are respectfully removed, acknowledged as human beings first and artifacts second. The prevailing sentiment is evolving, moving towards a greater recognition of the inherent dignity of the deceased, even those from millennia ago. One little-known fact about modern mummy research is the discovery of ancient tattoos on some mummified individuals, particularly women. These tattoos, often geometric patterns or figures of deities, offer fascinating insights into ancient Egyptian body art, religious practices, and social customs, providing a unique window into aspects of daily life not always captured in official tomb reliefs. This unexpected detail adds another layer to your personal story, a silent painted narrative beneath your skin. The academic debate concerning the agency of the deceased in modern contexts is particularly salient when discussing mummies. Scholars often deliberate on whether contemporary display practices honor or disrespect the ancient Egyptians' wishes for their eternal rest. The challenge lies in balancing scientific and educational imperatives with the ethical considerations of posthumous autonomy, a complex and evolving discussion that continues to shape the future of mummy exhibition and research. This is a subtle yet profound argument. Are we, the living, truly respecting the dead even as we study them? Even as your mummified remains grace museum halls and fuel academic debate, your ultimate journey in the eyes of your ancient creators remained incomplete. For the ancient Egyptians, the goal of mummification wasn't just physical preservation, it was the guarantee of a blissful, eternal afterlife in the field of reeds. And reaching this paradise was no simple feat even after surviving the terrifying trials of the Duat. Imagine finally passing the dreaded weighing of the heart, your heart light as Mayat's feather. A wave of relief, if such a thing were possible for a disembodied soul, might wash over you. You are deemed mat keru, true of voice, or justified and thus worthy. But this isn't an instant teleportation to paradise. You still had to navigate the final stages to fully integrate into this divine realm. The field of reeds, or the Seket Aru, was envisioned as a perfect, idealized version of the Nile Delta. Think lush green fields, abundant harvests, calm waterways, and a perpetual gentle breeze. It was a place of eternal peace and plenty, free from the hardships of earthly life. For a people whose lives were so intimately tied to the cycles of the Nile and the fertility of the land, this was the ultimate reward, a place where hunger, thirst, and toil were unknown. However, even in paradise, the Egyptians believed in a certain level of structure. You wouldn't just wander aimlessly. You would have your own plot of land to cultivate to ensure your continued sustenance. But here's the clever part. Remember those Ushapti figures we discussed? This is where they truly came into their own. While you, the justified deceased, would technically be responsible for your eternal farm work, your loyal Ushapti would magically come to life and perform all the labor for you. Imagine sipping celestial ambrosia while your miniature servants diligently plow your eternal fields. It's the ultimate retirement plan. You would also interact with the gods in a much more direct way. Osiris, who judged you, would preside over this blissful realm. You might encounter Isis, Horus, and other deities living among them in harmonious existence. Your days would be filled with feasting, singing, and simply enjoying the perpetual tranquility. It was a place of reunion where you could be reunited with deceased family members and loved ones, ensuring that your eternal life was not a solitary one. But even this perfect paradise had its nuances. The Field of Reeds wasn't a static concept, and details varied across different periods and texts. Sometimes it was depicted as requiring a journey by boat, perhaps across celestial rivers. Other times it was a more immediate transition. This fluidity in the portrayal of paradise reflects the evolving theological understanding of the Egyptians themselves. One crucial aspect of your eternal life in the Field of Reeds was the continued importance of your name. The ancient Egyptians believed that to have your name spoken was to live. Conversely, to have your name forgotten or deliberately erased, as happened with pharaohs like Akhenaten, was to suffer the second death of eternal oblivion. Even in paradise, the memory and invocation of your name were vital for your continued existence. This is partly why tomb inscriptions and public monuments were so important. They ensured your name would be remembered by the living, thus guaranteeing your immortality. This emphasis on remembrance also explains why the destruction of a mummy was considered such an abhorrent act. It wasn't just about desecrating a body, it was about condemning a soul to utter non-existence, severing its link to both the earthly and divine realms. The ultimate horror for an ancient Egyptian wasn't physical pain, but spiritual annihilation. A lesser-known detail about the Field of Reeds is the presence of celestial cattle. These divine animals were believed to provide milk and sustenance for the justified dead, emphasizing the agricultural abundance of this paradise. It's a small, charming detail that reinforces the earthly ideals transferred to the heavenly realm. Scholars still debate the extent to which the concept of the Field of Reeds was a purely spiritual realm, versus having a more tangible, albeit divine reality for the ancient Egyptians. Some argue for a largely symbolic interpretation, while others suggest a more literal belief in a physical paradise. This academic discussion highlights the challenge of interpreting ancient religious cosmology through a modern lens, emphasizing that our understanding of their paradise is still evolving. Your journey, or rather your eternal rest, has been anything but. From the painstaking process of your mummification to the sealing of your tomb, the perils of the duat, and your unexpected modern-day celebrity in museums, your existence as an Egyptian mummy has been a series of profound transformations and constant disturbances. And now, as we reach the culmination of your story, we arrive at the very end of your narrative journey, a quiet fading into the eternal hum. Imagine one last time your current state. You lie still behind glass, perhaps in a hushed museum gallery in some distant land, or perhaps carefully preserved in a secure archive. The ancient oils and resins that bind your bandages have long since hardened. The faint scent of millennia-old linen and dry dust might still cling to you, perceptible only to the most sensitive instruments. You are a bridge across time, a silent ambassador from a world that ceased to exist long before our own. Your story is one of unwavering belief, of meticulous craftsmanship, and of an extraordinary dedication to the concept of eternal life. The ancient Egyptians poured their very being, their resources, and their ingenuity into ensuring that death was merely a doorway, not a final curtain. They believed that by preserving your body, they were preserving your soul's chance at ultimate bliss. And in a way, they succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Your physical form has endured, allowing your story to be told to inspire wonder and to teach countless generations about a civilization that, despite its distance in time, still captivates us. But the awfulness of being an Egyptian mummy from your ancient perspective persists even now. Your privacy has been utterly violated. Your intended eternal rest has been repeatedly disturbed. Your physical form, once a sacred vessel, has been subjected to scientific scrutiny, public display, and even in darker times to disrespectful curiosity. The very purpose for which you were so painstakingly prepared, a quiet, undisturbed path to the field of reeds, has been fundamentally altered by the relentless march of human history and curiosity. Yet there is a strange beauty in this enduring presence. You are a whisper from the past, a tangible connection to the deep human desire for immortality. You remind us of the fragility of life and the powerful human need to transcend it. You highlight the incredible ingenuity of a people who mastered complex processes with rudimentary tools. And you continue to pose profound questions about life-death belief and our responsibility to the past. Your journey is now largely complete. The grand ceremonies, the solemn prayers, the terrifying encounters in the duat, the intrusive shovels of archaeologists, the bright lights of museum halls. These are all parts of your long, incredible story. You have endured a silent, powerful testament to the passage of time and the enduring mysteries of human existence. As the echoes of your long story begin to fade, picture the quiet of the museum at closing time, the last footsteps receding, the lights dimming. Or perhaps imagine the deep, dry stillness of a newly discovered tomb before the cameras arrive, before the world truly descends. It is in these moments of profound quiet that your true, albeit silent essence remains. You are the embodiment of an ancient dream, a preserved echo of humanity's earliest aspirations for eternity. And in that stillness, you finally truly rest,